I was 12 the day I stopped being a daughter. It was a gray Thursday morning, the kind where even the birds seemed hesitant to sing. My father's old sedan rolled to a stop outside the brick building, its chipped green paint flaking near the windows. There was no hug goodbye, no warm explanation. Just the metallic click of the door unlocking and my mother's voice flat, without inflection. "Stay here. We'll be back after the meeting." She didn't look at me. My father tapped the steering wheel, staring ahead as though he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. I stepped out with my school bag in hand and the weight of something unspoken crushing my chest. I waited on the bench outside for hours that turned into dusk. No one came. Eventually, a woman in scrubs opened the door and asked me gently, "Sweetheart, are you lost?" That was the first time I told someone. I think my parents left me. They didn't leave a note. No emergency contact. No explanation. That night, I slept in a bunk bed between two girls with haunted eyes and hands that flinched in their sleep. I clutched my backpack like a lifeline. Inside it, a worn paperback copy of Little Women, a peanut butter sandwich, and a necklace my grandmother had given me on my 7th birthday, a thin chain with a tiny silver compass. I remember whispering to it, "Get me out of here. Find me a way." The state called it voluntary placement, a loophole that allowed parents to surrender a child without legal consequences under the guise of being unable to provide care. There were forms, social workers, therapists with tired eyes and clipboards full of questions. But none of it explained why my mother never answered my letters, or why my father never returned a single call. I wasn't a problem child. I didn't break rules or scream or steal. But I was quiet. I read too much. I asked why too often. And perhaps worst of all, I saw things. Like the way my parents whispered about money late at night. Or how my older brother, Cole, got a private tutor and basketball lessons while I got silence and chores. The shelter was supposed to be temporary. A few weeks. Maybe a month. But months turned into seasons. Seasons turned into years. By the time I turned 16, I had moved through 3 group homes, 2 emergency placements, and a short stint with foster parents who mainly wanted the check. I had stopped hoping they would come back. Instead, I began building a new identity, not just out of survival, but out of stubborn defiance. If they didn't want me, I would become someone they'd regret losing. My name is Sabrina Calloway, and I was not built by love. I was forged by abandonment. The night I got accepted into the early university entry program, I sat alone in my room, the acceptance email glowing like a sunrise on my cracked phone screen. My heart raced as I whispered the words aloud. They gave up on me, but I'm just getting started. I didn't have a prom dress or senior pictures. No graduation dinner or proud parents clapping in the audience. But what I had was a suitcase, a scholarship letter, and a bank account I'd been quietly building from tutoring, babysitting, and summer jobs since I was 14. At 17, I boarded a Greyhound bus heading out of the county I once called home, a county that never called me back. My seatmate was a woman twice my age who fell asleep snoring before we hit the freeway. I stared out the window, counting power lines, billboards, exits. With every mile, I felt the weight of the past loosen, like a tightly knotted rope finally fraying. I arrived in Raleigh with $212, a prepaid phone, and a fire in my chest that refused to go out. The university dorm was modest, but it was mine, a space no one could pull me out of without warning. My roommate was a girl named Mia, the kind of bubbly energy that both exhausted and comforted me. She introduced me to microwavable ramen, late-night campus walks, and how to apply mascara without poking your eye out. She never asked about my past. Just treated me like I belonged. It was the first time I wasn't someone's case file or burden. I poured myself into my studies like a woman starving. Business strategy, behavioral economics, data modeling, I absorbed it all. My professors noticed. Some smiled. Some challenged me harder. And one, Professor Lydia Chin, pulled me aside after a midterm and said, "You think like someone who's had to fight for every inch." She wasn't wrong. While other students went home for holidays, I stayed behind and worked. Campus emptied. Lights dimmed. But I thrived in that silence. It gave me space to build. By junior year, I wasn't just surviving. I was creating. I started a student-run analytics firm with 2 classmates. We called it Northsight, born from the compass charm I still wore on a chain beneath my blouse. It started small, analyzing survey data for local startups, offering pricing models to coffee shops and campus orgs. But word spread. By senior year, we had over 20 clients and a local angel investor who offered seed funding. I negotiated the deal myself. I never used my parents' last name again. Sabrina Calloway became the only identity I claimed. No one on campus knew the girl who once waited outside a shelter door. I'd buried her. Or so I thought. Because you can't bury what haunts you. Sometimes, at night, I'd still dream of my mother's face, not angry, not cruel, just empty. Like I was a shadow she couldn't see or didn't want to. I didn't want revenge back then. I wanted to forget. But forgetting is harder than forgiveness. And sometimes, when you work this hard, the past doesn't just knock. It walks straight through the front door, dressed in regret, ready to beg. I just didn't know how close that door truly was. The first time I saw my name on a glass door, it didn't feel real. Sabrina Calloway, co-founder and CEO, etched cleanly across the frosted pane of our new office in downtown Charlotte. The lettering was sharp and professional, just like the woman I had become. We had just signed a lease for the space, a sunlit corner suite with exposed brick and real hardwood floors. My younger self would have thought it looked like a movie set, but I'd earned it, inch by inch. Late nights, unpaid favors, coffee-stained notebooks filled with ideas and risk calculations. Northsight had outgrown campus. We'd become a real force in predictive market strategy, especially for small to mid-tier companies desperate to compete with the giants. We weren't just a startup anymore. We were a problem for big firms who had ignored the little guys for too long. I spent long hours at that office, usually the first to arrive and last to leave. But I didn't mind. It was mine, my sanctuary, a place built with sweat and solitude. Still, success has a funny way of catching attention. Articles started appearing. Young CEO disrupts traditional data modeling. From campus dorms to corner office, meet the woman redefining startup growth. I never sought the spotlight, but when it found me, I didn't shy away. I had built a new name, and I wasn't afraid to let the world know it. What I didn't expect was who else might see it. It started with a call I nearly ignored. Blocked number. A woman's voice, hesitant, polite. Miss Calloway? I believe we may know each other. I nearly hung up, but something about the tremble in her voice made me pause. It's your mother. I saw your article in the Charlotte Business Review. You look so grown. Her voice cracked on the last word, like the sound of glass splintering beneath pressure. Your father and we'd like to meet you. Please. My mind went blank. My body didn't move. For nearly 12 years, I had imagined this moment. Pictured it in therapy, scribbled versions of it in journals I'd later burn. But nothing prepared me for how small and confused I felt hearing her voice again. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood in front of the mirror in my office's private restroom and stared at my own reflection. There was no trace of the girl from the shelter left in that mirror. No freckles. No oversized hand-me-down hoodie. Just a sleek blazer, perfectly aligned eyeliner, and a pair of heels that clicked like authority. They didn't raise you, I whispered to the mirror. They don't get to claim you now. But part of me wasn't sure if that was true. 2 weeks passed before I agreed to meet. Not at their house, wherever that was now, but in my office. On my terms. I had my assistant pencil them in for a 30-minute block on a quiet Thursday afternoon. No fanfare. No press. Just 2 ghosts stepping into a world they'd once refused to believe I could ever belong to. When the day came, I waited in the conference room, back straight, hands folded in front of me. And then, the door opened. There they were. Older, thinner. My father had grayed, his posture slightly hunched. My mother's face was carefully made up, but her eyes, those familiar green eyes, looked dimmer now. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could say a word, I stood up and extended my hand. Welcome to Northsight, I said calmly. What can I do for you? The silence after my greeting stretched longer than I expected. My mother blinked like I had spoken a foreign language. My father's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. It was like they hadn't prepared for me to be this. Not bitter, not broken, just composed. Professional. Completely in control. Have a seat, I offered, gesturing to the conference table. We have 26 minutes left. They sat down stiffly, across from me, their hands fidgeting like strangers at a job interview. I waited, arms crossed, leaning back slightly in my chair, the one with my name stitched into the leather headrest. My mother finally spoke. Sabrina, honey, you've done well for yourself. More than well. We saw the article. I didn't even recognize you at first. But then I saw the necklace. I instinctively touched the silver compass hanging just below my collarbone, the only remnant of the girl they left behind. You left me, I said flatly. At a shelter. No goodbye. No plan. Just gone. My father exhaled through his nose like he was steeling himself. It wasn't easy for us either. We weren't in a good place financially. And your brother. Don't, I cut him off. Don't say his name like that justifies what you did. They exchanged a glance. My mother tried again. We made mistakes. But we thought, maybe it was better that way. You were always so independent. We didn't think we could provide what you needed. I laughed. Not loudly, just enough to make them both flinch. You mean I wasn't worth fighting for? Their silence confirmed it. There's a special kind of power in watching people squirm in the shadow of your success. They had come here, into my office, thinking they could rewrite the story. That maybe I'd welcome them with tears, apologies, a shaky hug. But I was no longer the girl they left. I was the woman they underestimated, the one who turned abandonment into ambition. Why are you really here? I asked, finally tiring of the charade. They hesitated. My father spoke first. Your brother's business, it's failing. We co-signed a few loans for him. The banks, tightening. And there it was. Not guilt. Not closure. Need. I leaned forward, my voice cool. Let me be clear, I owe you nothing. Not a dollar. Not a name. Not even this meeting. My mother's eyes welled up. We didn't come for money. We came because you're our daughter. No, I said quietly. You had a daughter. You gave her away. I stood up and walked to the door. Opened it. I have a business to run. Your time is up. They stood stunned. My mother lingered by the doorway, her eyes searching mine for something forgiveness, perhaps. A bridge. A second chance. But I had already burned the bridge. All that was left was the fireproof woman who crossed the river alone. Goodbye, I said, and shut the door behind them. After they left, I didn't cry. I didn't scream or pace or fall apart. I sat back down in my chair, pressed my palms against the edge of the conference table, and stared at the grain of the wood. It was strange, this room had seen negotiations worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet somehow, that 30-minute visit from two people who once knew me better than anyone else felt more emotionally expensive. I didn't regret turning them away. But I did feel hollow. Mia called that night. She always had a sixth sense for my silences. You okay? They came today, I said simply. Oh, Sabrina. She didn't say anything else for a moment. She didn't have to. For the next few weeks, I buried myself in work. I expanded our client portfolio, mentored a handful of young women from underprivileged communities through a startup accelerator, and even started drafting a plan for a foundation, something that would provide grants to girls like me, abandoned, underestimated, and unseen. One morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Just a folded piece of paper inside. Handwritten. I'm sorry. I truly am. If I could go back, I would have done it differently. I was scared, and I failed you. Not because you weren't enough, but because I wasn't. Mom. No money request this time. No defense. Just guilt on paper. I sat with it for a long time before placing it inside my desk drawer, right beneath my incorporation papers and client contracts. A reminder of where I came from, and how far I'd climbed. A month later, I attended a gala, one of those lavish networking events full of wealthy investors, politicians, and CEOs looking to shake hands and smile through champagne. As I walked across the ballroom in a midnight blue dress and heels sharp enough to carve stone, someone called out from behind me. Calloway. I turned. A man in his 50s, silver hair, expensive suit. One of the city's top investors, the kind who could make or break an acquisition with a nod. I've been hearing your name everywhere, he said, shaking my hand. You're building something real. Something resilient. He wasn't the first to say it, but coming from him, it meant something. More than my parents' approval ever could. That night, I stood on a balcony overlooking the city, the lights stretching for miles like constellations stitched into the earth. I thought of the girl who once stood outside a sheltered door with everything she owned in a backpack. She was still inside me, but quieter now. Steadier. You made it, I whispered. Not because of them. In spite of them. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Blood may tie you to the past, but it doesn't define your worth. You get to choose who deserves a seat at your table. And sometimes, it's okay to leave it empty. 3 months after my parents walked out of my office, I was invited to keynote the Southeastern Women's Business Summit in Atlanta. The theme that year was resilience and reinvention, and my story, apparently, fit the bill. I almost declined. I wasn't used to telling the whole truth on stages. I could talk about scaling a startup, about market trends and leadership principles, but peeling back the layers of who I used to be, that required a kind of bravery I wasn't sure I had in front of a crowd. But Mia nudged me. You don't have to tell them everything. Just tell them what you needed to hear when you were 17 and alone. So I agreed. The day of the summit, the ballroom was packed. Rows upon rows of women, entrepreneurs, students, executives, waiting to hear from a list of successful speakers. I was the final one, the headliner. My hands trembled as I took the stage, but my voice held steady. Good evening. My name is Sabrina Calloway, and 12 years ago, I was dropped off at a shelter with a plastic bag of clothes and no return ticket. A hush fell over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. I told them about sleeping in group rooms, hiding my fear behind books, finding scholarships, building a business from scratch. I didn't name my parents, but I didn't have to. The message was clear. People will tell you what you're not. They'll assign you a worth based on their own limitations. But your value isn't up for debate. It's up to you. When I finished, the standing ovation caught me off guard. Women stood with tears in their eyes. Some clapped like they were clapping for their own younger selves. Afterward, at the networking mixer, a woman from a national magazine approached me. We're doing a feature on women who defied their past, she said. You'd be perfect. 2 weeks later, my face was on the cover of Empower Her Monthly with the headline. She was left behind, now she leads ahead. That issue made its way to thousands of mailboxes. One of those, I later learned, was my parents. It wasn't long before the ripple effect began. More media requests, a TEDx talk, and then a call from a university board offering me an honorary doctorate for contributions to women's entrepreneurship. The ceremony was held on the same stage where my graduation had once felt hollow, years before. This time, I wore a different kind of robe. This time, I wasn't in the audience. I was the reason they gathered. My name echoed through the auditorium. Dr. Sabrina Calloway. And somewhere I knew the people who once said I wouldn't amount to anything were watching the woman they'd underestimated receive standing applause. Not from them, but from a world that saw me. Finally, fully. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when the email arrived. Subject: urgent request, family emergency. From carla.tate@gmail.com. I stared at the screen, heart still for a moment. Carla Tate was my mother's maiden name. I hadn't heard anything from them in months, not since that letter of regret with no return address. Against my better judgment, I clicked. Sabrina, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but your brother, Marcus, is in trouble. Legal trouble. His company is being investigated for fraud. He's scared. He needs help. We all do. I'm sorry this is how we reach out again, but you're the only one who knows how to handle things like this. Please, can we talk? I closed the laptop. Not angrily, not tearfully, just tired. That evening, I walked to the corner cafe where I used to scribble business plans in the margins of napkins. I sat by the same window, sipping tea, watching rain blur the city lights. They still thought I was the same girl, desperate for connection. willing to fix what they broke. Why no? I whispered to no one. I wasn't surprised they came only when Marcus was in trouble. He was always their investment, their golden boy. And now, when his life unraveled, they turned to the daughter they left behind because she was the only one who'd built something strong. I didn't respond to the email for a week. Then, finally, I sent one line. I'll meet you. One time. My terms. They agreed. We met in a neutral location, a law office conference room downtown. This time, no emotion. Just contracts and cool lighting and an assistant taking notes beside me. Marcus looked terrible. Thinner. Uneasy. I almost didn't recognize him. My parents sat beside him, hands folded. They didn't speak until I gave them permission. You understand, I said, that any help I offer will be transactional, not familial. This is a professional matter. My father nodded. My mother flinched. We're just asking for guidance, she said. A plan. Maybe a referral. And why would I offer that? I asked. Because it's the right thing to do, she whispered. I leaned back, studied her. You're asking for mercy from someone you abandoned. The right thing to do would have been not leaving me behind. Still, I offered them the bare minimum. A name of a lawyer. A list of mistakes Marcus should stop making. Nothing more. No money. No warmth. No return to anything resembling family. When they thanked me, I nodded but said nothing. This was not reconciliation. This was business. After they left, the lawyer I'd brought, Nadine, a trusted partner, turned to me. That was generous of you, she said. I don't know if I could have sat across from people who discarded me like that. I shrugged. I didn't do it for them, I said. I did it to remind myself I'm not who they made. I'm who I became despite them. And that was the real revenge. The university gala that spring was unlike anything I'd attended before. A charity banquet under a vaulted glass ceiling, chandeliers glowing like stardust. I'd been invited as the evening's honored guest, not just for my entrepreneurial achievements, but for a new scholarship I'd personally funded. The Calloway Resilience Grant for students abandoned or displaced during adolescence. That night, I wore a tailored emerald gown, my hair swept back, no jewelry except a simple silver bracelet, the only thing I had left from my childhood, given to me by my first group home counselor. I walked through that gala like I belonged there. Because now I did. During the dinner, the MC introduced me with words I'd never imagined hearing attached to my name. An innovator. A leader. A woman who turned her own survival into a platform for others to rise. As I walked to the podium, I scanned the crowd. Near the back, I caught a glimpse of them. My parents. My brother. I hadn't invited them, but the event was public, and I suppose their curiosity got the better of them. I considered acknowledging them, maybe even calling them out. But no, that would give them power they didn't deserve. Instead, I spoke directly to the people who had shown up when it mattered. This grant isn't just about tuition, I said. It's about sending a message to every student who's been made to feel unworthy. You are not the sum of someone else's neglect. You are the author of your own story. Thunderous applause followed. Not for my pain, but for the way I'd used it to build something. After the speech, as people lined up to greet me, I noticed my father hanging back, unsure. My mother beside him, wringing her hands. My brother looking anywhere but at me. Eventually, they approached. We didn't expect all of this, my father said quietly. Clearly, I replied, smiling without warmth. My mother tried. We saw what you did for those kids. It's remarkable. They're not kids, I corrected. They're survivors. Like me. Is there any chance, she started, but I stopped her. This isn't your redemption story. It's mine. And then I turned to greet a scholarship recipient who was waiting patiently behind them, a girl with bright eyes and shaky hands, reminding me of who I once was. Hi there, I said warmly. Let me show you what's possible. A week after the gala, I received a thick envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name in familiar, slightly slanted handwriting. Inside was a letter. Pages of it. Written in my mother's hand. I hesitated before reading. But eventually, curiosity outweighed bitterness. Sabrina. I've started this letter 100 times. Nothing feels like enough. It wasn't the usual excuse-filled monologue I'd grown used to in my head. It was different. Stripped down. Painfully honest. We were scared when we let you go. Not scared of you, but of what you reminded us of, our own failures. You were too much, too smart, too strong-willed, too much like the people we weren't brave enough to be. Marcus was easier. Easier to mold. Easier to please. But he's lost now. And you shine. And we missed it all. We missed you. The last page simply said, I know I can't ask for forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll allow us to know the woman we failed to raise. Mom. I read it 3 times, folded it back up, slipped it into the drawer with the others. That drawer, my drawer of almosts, of letters that came too late. Later that evening, I sat with Mia on the balcony of our apartment, watching the sunset dissolve into city lights. I told her about the letter. Are you going to write back? She asked. I shook my head slowly. I don't need more words. What I needed, I've already built. You don't want a final conversation? She asked gently. I've already had it, I said, nodding to the skyline. Every time I said yes to myself when they said no. Every decision I made to be more than what they left behind. That was the conversation. In the months that followed, my story was picked up by more platforms. A film company even reached out, floating the idea of a dramatized series. But the most powerful moment came when I visited a group home to speak to girls just like I once was. One of them, maybe 12, asked me, how did you stop hating them? I paused, thought carefully. By remembering they don't get to define who I become, I said. They made their choice. And I made mine. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was quiet, respectful, healing. And in that silence, I realized something. Revenge wasn't loud. It was steady. It was the life you built when nobody believed you could. The building was quiet that night. Everyone had gone home, and I stayed behind to finish reviewing contracts for the expansion of my mentorship foundation. The walls of my office were lined with awards now. A plaque from the governor's office. Photos from universities where I'd spoken. Newspaper clippings of Abandoned Girl Builds Empire. All pieces of a life no one could have imagined for me, except me. That's when I heard it. A knock. Soft. Hesitant. I turned slowly. Mia wasn't expecting me. Security wouldn't knock. Another knock, slightly firmer. I stood, heels echoing against the floor as I crossed the office. When I opened the door, it was them. My parents. Their faces were older than I remembered. Lined with regret. My mother held a small photo in her hand. The one I'd drawn in crayons at 7 years old, our family, before the storm. My father's eyes were red, rimmed with something that might have been remorse or just exhaustion. We're not here to ask for anything, he said. Just to say we're sorry. Truly. And proud of you. Proud. That word a grenade in my gut. There was silence. I didn't cry. Didn't speak. I only stepped aside and let the door close gently behind me. Sabrina, my mother said, can we talk? We've talked, I said softly. Every time I built something they said I couldn't. That was the conversation. They both looked down. We saw you on the news, my father murmured. The award. The foundation. The scholarship in your name. You've done more than we ever imagined. I nodded. Not coldly. Just, truthfully. You imagine someone small, I said. And I stopped trying to fit your frame a long time ago. They stayed a few minutes longer. Apologized again. Offered to meet sometime, maybe reconnect. This time, my mother said, on your terms. I didn't answer them then. I just walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened the folder for my next student grant. Because in that moment, I understood something deeper than revenge. I had become someone they couldn't ignore. Not because I wanted their approval, but because I no longer needed it. As they left, I watched them disappear through the hallway glass. No tears. No final confrontation. Just a quiet end to a loud ache. The girl they left behind was gone. The woman at the helm of a future they never believed in? She had closed the door herself.